Do you want to do a welcome to part 2?
Oh, that's a really good idea. This is part 2 of our Point Break episode. If you've not watched or listened to part 1, then probably go back and watch that, I reckon.
Good shout.
It was a great episode. People have said it's the best one we've done.
You've been surfing the web again? I found a way to get it in there.
Because it's a surf joke, innit? Anyway, enjoy part 2. What do you think about the action sequences in it? So, like, the stunts more.
The stunts, for the most part, great. I said earlier, I'll touch on it again, things I noticed in the passive watch of the film. I noticed quite bad, or not bad stuntmen, but poor matchups for stuntmen on a lot of the surfing scenes especially. Mm-hmm. To the point where you realise at the time they were making this film, they weren't thinking about HD. Obviously it wasn't a thing. The HD film was just HD at that point. And they weren't thinking about people like me sat there being able to pause it, rewind, go back and go, is it that bad? Oh yeah, and then I can play it in slow motion. I can still the frames that I can.
And he does do this.
I mean, we could take some of the footage and drop it in here now, and we could manipulate it to the point where we're making a version of the film. You know, the time it was made, it was a lot easier to say, you know, it's a little bit out of frame. There's a bit of a, you said yourself to me before we spoke about this. It's highly backlit.
Yeah.
There's not loads of detail on the face, regardless of how HD it is, but even just the physicality of some of the actors. I mean, Keanu and Patrick Swayze are in insanely good shape in these films. They look great. But Keanu is, Swayze as well, but they're very lean and sort of, you know, shredded and muscular. And a couple of the stuntmen are like real big dudes to the point where one of them, I thought it was War Child from the neo-Nazi group that they end up fighting, the other surfers.
Yeah.
Like, he looks like a wrestler more than a surfer. And there's a couple of times where
is War Child the blonde one that
the big main dude?
Yeah, that Keanu
with the tattoos. And,
yeah.
I
Not Anthony Kiedis from the Chili Peppers.
No, not him. Not him getting shot in the foot, which looks... Do you know what? He sells that, because the bit where he's talking...
When he screams up when he's behind the door.
Yeah, that's a great bit of acting.
Yeah, it is good.
So the scene we see before that, where it's... and this is very Catherine Bigelow, of a literal point of view shot of the camera moving, and all these characters looking right down the barrel of the camera being like, we're surfers, but we'll kick your ass, man, and all that they're doing. His bit in that, you're like, he's not an actor. But the bit where he gets shot in the foot and just screams, and even in those fight scenes where he's throwing himself around and getting ready to shoot, he's great at that. Yeah. The physical acting, the more... But the dialogue bit, again, I don't think it's a criticism, because, I mean, I'm not even the biggest Chili Peppers fan. That kind of music isn't... But, you know, it's iconic at this. You can not like the music, but still be able to go, no, I get it.
Yeah. See, I'm the opposite. I'm a big Chili Peppers fan, like when Flea pops up in Back to the Future, I'm like, that's my boy.
He's in a few films,
Yeah, and then Anthony Kiedis is in this. But there's a funny story about him, that during the fight sequences that they were planning them out, and I've been lucky enough to do some pretty elaborate like fight sequences in the stuff I've done, and the rehearsal and the choreograph that has to go into that is way, way more technical than any blocking for, you know, just like for the actual setting in the scenes.
Yeah.
And Anthony didn't turn up for the rehearsal. So if you ever watch the film again, that's why he gets knocked out like straight away and he's off. It's like, you weren't here for the practice, bang, you're out. Let's fight with the people who actually turned up. It's like, that's what happens. You don't. Yeah. But, you know, maybe he was on tour or something. I don't know.
But he's him in there. It adds to this. I said to you that this film feels to me like it could be almost like a weird dream sequence, because there's those scenes that I mentioned where the lighting's funny and it's slightly out of focus, and even like the music is very, you know, you feel like you're in like a spa retreat and there's like all cool, relaxing Zen music. And then the freneticness of the action scenes, it almost feels like a dream. If you've ever had one of those really weird dreams where... I had a few recently where, as I say, every scene, that's probably the wrong word, but every part of your dream it's not like one continuous story that makes sense if I was to tell you what happened. You know, it's this thing of like you're in a room that's your room, then it's not a room, and then you're riding a dragon, and then you're driving a car, and then all of a sudden you sat at a school table and you're like, oh, we're doing a test, and you're like, well, I don't. And it has that feel where you go from this really to like the madness.
When I was in uni, I was talking to one of my mates, and he was telling me about this dream, and it was quite like what you were saying then. And I was like, I was having trouble trying to understand what he was talking about. And he turned around to me and it's like a dream, like a movie dream. And people started laughing, but I knew what he meant. I was like, I've never heard it said like that, and I've never described it to anyone as that. But when he went, oh, it's like a movie dream, as if I would know, and I was like, he called it. I did know.
Oh yeah, I read the script. I remember.
I passed on it. I couldn't deal with it.
I'm one of those douchebags who's like, oh, don't tell me about your dream. That's the most boring thing you can do. But then I go like, no, but I had this dream.
No, but wait.
Yeah, you're not in mine though. What a narcissist.
I want to talk about Swayze and his stunts.
Yeah.
So we've spoke that he didn't necessarily do a lot of the surfing. I think he broke like 4 ribs while trying to surf.
I can believe it.
Yeah, I think for me there's three types of stunts within this, or action set pieces. There's the ones where it's clearly a stunt person who's stood in for them, and they've tried to disguise it, like you've said about backlight in it and shadows and stuff like that. Then there's the middle bit where it's, a camera just underneath the actors going, whoa, I'm falling out of a plane, man. It's like... And then there's the complete opposite end of the stunt person one, is when it's literally Swayze back to the door out of the plane.
Yeah.
And it's a full-on shot of him dropping out. And then furthermore, he's obviously an accomplished dancer. He's spinning around and he's folding over and then the camera's into his face. They didn't have the CGI to be able to just cut and paste his face onto somebody.
Yeah.
And I would argue that you can definitely tell that because they don't do it with anyone else. But it's him jumping out. I think he did like 55 jumps for that movie.
Nice, right.
And
he must have some experience in doing it then as well. Because even just the dancing... The physicality of the dancing would help.
I think. I don't think it maybe like made him a better skydiver, but he's got that athleticism about him, and he knows how to move and stuff. So he's obviously a very like physical person, and he knows how to hold himself and how to move. But those scenes are brilliant. When I don't think it's necessary for a film to have that, but if you're going to have an actor going, oh, this character, can run, jump, fly, and all this, and then you see them doing those things, you're like, shit, yeah, I'm buying in more into this.
Yeah, there's a couple of shots of Keanu in that sequence as well where I do think he does do, a couple of jumps, because there was a couple of shots where, as much as there were shots where I really noticed it wasn't them. There were a couple of shots where I was like, that's got to be him.
Yeah,
Swayze definitely. There's almost no
question about it. Yeah.
And Keanu, we know, does like to do his own stunts, even if not for every shot and every take. And they might not end up using the take that he does. He at least gets involved with, like you say, in the choreographing and the blocking. And so, again, John Wick, he does the Terran tactical courses and trains for special forces guys just to play a cool action guy. Yeah. So,
which is funny,
I can imagine him getting involved.
There's those YouTube videos, isn't there, of Keanu Reeves, shooting the guns and reloading and all that. And it's like, wait a second, he did that at the beginning of Point Break. He just carries on doing that weekly. The bit where Bodhi drops out the plane backwards is when he says "Adios amigos" and drops out. I just thought it was I almost watched it the second time recently, and I can almost, maybe I'm imagining it, but it's almost like a giddiness on his face that he's like, this is going to be in this. Yeah, this is in this movie. This is in.
Yeah. Yeah.
No matter what, I'm getting. Right? Can you imagine that I'm getting paid to do the thing I love and the hobby that I love all together in this thing? Yeah, because apparently he's a super competitive person, or unfortunately was a super competitive person.
Yeah.
And I think he clearly must have danced a very, very fine line of being known as a very competitive person, but not a dickhead. There's no stories that come out about him being aggressive or anything like that. From what I've read about on set at Point Break, he was competitive, but he was like trying to get Gary Busey to come up and jump out of a plane, and it was almost like let's all do this and compete against each other.
Yeah.
The fun side of competition of like you do something to try and beat me, and I'll do something to try and beat you, and guess what? We both have a great experience and do better.
We all
because
elevate each other's game, each other's experience.
I mean, that's a difficult line to. I'm guessing he naturally walked that line quite easily.
Yeah,
but
some people have that fire in the belly naturally, don't they?
And to
he
not come across
obviously
as a dickhead.
it. Yeah, and that I think that's probably the difference. That a lot of people have that, and there's horror stories, and he seemed like he handled it. I mean, I feel, and again, I don't know this. I obviously didn't know him, but it feels like there is a lot of him in Bodhi. There's a lot of him in that character, and maybe that's why, like you say, he was drawn to it, and it also went against where he'd played tough guys or romantic leads before this, and he in real life was somewhere in between that. Of, he can handle himself. He enjoys the athleticism, but there's a lot more beneath that. And it did feel very real. I actually found this watch of it and that end scene quite emotional compared to when I'd watched it when I was younger. And possibly because since Swayze's passed since I've watched it, when I was a lot younger. And I just noticed that a little more of, and maybe because we'd both done a bit of reading into the thing, having that in my mind of like, this feels quite close to who Swayze is. Yeah. And there was a real, like I say, a real bittersweet.
I think Swayze
sort of
falls into that category the same as like Johnny Depp does and Brad Pitt, that because people idolised him or still do idolise him, and he is a very good looking, very capable specimen, is as good a word as anything.
He'd eat tea off him with no hands, of course.
He could bounce a quarter off his ass. What? No one ever said anything like that. That people overlook that. How good of an actor he really was. Yeah, I know I'm going off onto a different film, but in Ghost, when all that's happened and he finds out that he got screwed over and all that, and I was gonna say without ruining Ghost, but fuck it, it's an old film where his adversary gets killed and becomes a ghost. Swayze knows what's going to happen to this ghost because he was a bad guy. And he doesn't say anything, and his eyes are tearing up, and he's looking almost dead into the camera. And you see in his character that this didn't need to happen. You've created all this, and despite you killing me or getting me killed, I still feel bad for what's about to happen. And he doesn't say anything. He just tears up in his eyes, and he holds the tension in his face in a way where you're like, fucking hell, even with his adversary dying in front of him, he's still a good person.
There's still some remorse and some empathy and sympathy, and
yeah.
He is one of those actors who can hold a scene, like you say, with just holding a bit of tension in his face and holding an expression, or even holding an expression within an expression, smiling but it not quite reaching his eyes. He is quite,
I feel like he's in the
underrated.
Moment. Yeah, I think he's the character all the time, and you're drawn to that because he's fully committed. Even you don't have to be singing, dancing, shouting, or look at me. He's living that moment, that character every moment. Speaking of Ghost, actually, that wasn't a segue, but speaking of Ghost, it's the reason why that extremely long chase scene is why Bodhi is wearing the Ronald Reagan mask, because it's not Swayze.
Oh no, really?
Yeah, it's not Swayze. Swayze was in Europe doing launching Ghost, so he's doing all the press and all that sort of stuff. So that really long, it's a great scene. It's got that very sort of great for Bigelow, that sort of military sort of shaky cam next to the actors, and they're running, jumping over fences, through houses. And there's one bit that really pisses me off when not Bodhi but Bodhi chucks a dog at Keanu Reeves. It's like, who chucks a fucking dog? But then Keanu Reeves kicks it. It's like, fuck you, Utah, kicking a dog.
To be fair though, that dog, it was just like, a 50-pound head with muscle on it.
I know, but
like,
it did the dog whimper thing, and I was like,
yeah,
oh, shit.
I reacted to that. I won't lie, my stomach tensed up a bit at that, where I was like, oh, I mean, I don't want to get my face bitten off, but you know, don't drop kick it.
Who chucks a dog?
Yeah.
Who kicks a dog?
They hide it well though, because I never knew that.
I suspect that the close up right at the end, because I feel like well, they could have done that another day, couldn't they?
Yeah. There's a couple of moments like that where they cut to closer ups or extreme close up, where they must have picked that up later and dropped that in. Yeah, I mean, there's something about the ex-presidents, like that. Something I forgot, that the characters themselves are in character as the presidents as well.
Yeah.
So especially, I can't remember who it
I'm
is
not a
who
crook.
does who, but the guy doing Nixon, and it's genuinely funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he does a bit when you first see him. He's got his real tongue. He's coming out of the rubber lips and up, and he just slivers it back in. You're like, oh, he definitely did that as a bit of a bit. Yeah. Actually, just going back a couple of beats, I think there's one missed opportunity in this film, just for me, is after that chase scene. The scene after that, basically at the end of it, it's Bodie. We know it's Bodie and his gang as the ex-presidents, and he knows that Johnny Utah is a Fed now. And the next scene after it is the gang picking up Johnny Utah in the middle of the night to go skydiving. But there's a lot of sort of, does he know that I know that they know? And I just thought it would have been great to have a scene where they were all sat at a meal. Maybe it's another party at Bodie's you know, they're all playing cards or something. And the psychological warfare between Bodie knowing that Utah is an FBI agent, but Bodie still has to question whether or not Utah know that I know. And then Utah...
Or does Utah know who I am?
Yeah, and then Utah has to question, does Bodie know that I know if he's the ex-president?
Yeah.
And I just thought it could have been like a really sort of quite a slow but quite a serious and dark scene.
I know what you mean. For me, they do that, but what adds to it, Bodie's clever, and he doesn't pick an equal footing situation. He knows Keanu's hurt. Utah mentions out the reason he didn't make it pro in college with football, even though they all know who he is, because he was... College football in America is like...
Oh, yeah. It's like
the football pyramid in the UK, it's huge.
Yeah.
You know, like a League One, League Two team over here will just be like a college or university team over there.
Yeah.
And they all know that he had a bad knee, and he knows that when Utah falls and can't chase him, it's because of his knee. So just another little thing, part of character building. Oh, and it also impacts the story. Yeah. Great.
You know, Keanu Reeves was he hurt his knee and couldn't become a professional ice hockey player.
Oh yeah,
and that's how he became
another layer. Another layer. But I like that he knows he's hurt. He comes to his house. He realizes Utah must at least suspect who I am. Why else would he just be in the group? And even if he doesn't, I know he's off balance at the moment, because he's at least lying to us, even if he's not after us. So like, we've come to his house, we're reminding him we know where you live and you're in. And there is a lot of that dialogue back and forth where it's almost letting the audience know. They probably both know that each other knows, but neither of them wants to make that first move to hurt the other one. Yeah. And you even think that the bit with the parachute, with the passing the bag round.
Oh, yeah.
He gives Utah the parachute, and then he says, oh, I'll swap for you. And then everyone swaps to the point where Utah gets the original parachute back. And he's obviously thinking, well, there's no parachute in it. And even Joe can go like, oh, you don't want his. Or you don't pack it very well. And even that is almost, for me, it feels better than the traditional sit down at a dinner table and two guys facing off, because one, it's true to the characters. It's in the mode of the extreme sports, but also it keeps that pace up of, okay, we slowed down a bit because Keanu hurt his knee and his girlfriend's mad at him, and just as he's having a breather and it seems like it's all going wrong. Oh, and now they're at your house and now they're taking you from the plane. It's like didn't get a moment.
Yeah, I think maybe a combination of it. I would have liked to have seen it happen with people who weren't part of either the FBI or the ex-presidents. Kind of sat there almost like, I don't understand what's going on here. And
if Bodhi didn't tell them, or if they didn't realise, or
some sort of way, and it was almost like, what is the angle here? And watching them sort of, like almost like battling their wits against each other rather than any sort of physical altercation.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
but I mean, when I say it's a missed opportunity, I don't think that it's screaming for it. It just, for me, it would have been nice to put in there. Yeah.
I mean, it's an excuse to have more time of them one-on-one talking, because actually, almost every scene with Utah and Bodhi, there's other characters there.
Yeah.
Either love interest, adversaries. There's only a couple of brief moments where it's just those two one-on-one.
Yeah. I think at the end of the fight on the beach for the first time when Bodhi turns up
and he's walking to the car and he's like, hey dude, and blah blah, and I'm
having some people over later, do you want to come round, sort of thing. Yeah.
It's a great film.
It is a good film. And it's funny that I've watched it twice quite recently, but I'm gonna get my missus to watch it with me. I think it's so much better in a way than its legacy.
Yeah,
like
it's the same thing with Starship Troopers, the same thing with They Live, arguably, and the same thing that I think with the thing I'm going to suggest to you.
Lots of things.
It's remembered very differently to how it really is, and even when people revisit it, they miss the point totally. And sometimes, without sounding like a dickhead, sometimes people are just stupid, and I'm like, if you don't get it, you don't get it. You talked about the Chill Peppers before. You cannot be a fan of something but understand that it's good.
Yeah.
You cannot like a particular song or music but realise why it is so
why people
popular.
do it,
Something like this, though, if all you see is Gary Busey, throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, and Keanu having awkward moments of dialogue, and that one bit on the beach was like, ooh. If that's all you take away from this film, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Just don't watch films.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think you've done yourself a disservice there by not watching it. But then also the fact of watching it now with adult eyes, it's going to be a different experience than
with hungry eyes, you could argue.
That's the wrong Swayze film. It's the wrong Swayze film. But yeah, have you got anything that you want to quickly throw in at the end? I've got a really great quote from it.
Go on, we'll end with your quote then.
The air got dirty and the sex got clean.
I love it.
I mean, it was 1991, so the sex wasn't that clean. There was a lot of nasty illnesses going on. A lot of things
going on. A lot of worries. A lot of fears.
Worries, yeah.
Right, speaking of
worries.
So, I've tried to give you a hint while we've been talking to see if you work it out about a certain cast member of a certain film I'm going to talk about. A film that I think is arguably misunderstood. He's remembered for certain moments, and maybe this time quite rightly. But I want to take your face off for the next with DRH. I think it's time for Nicolas Cage and John Travolta to get a good look in, to be watched.
That's a great shout. A great shout.
It's a film that I have super fond memories of.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of that 80s and 90s action schlock, which we said we could have just done a podcast series purely on action cinema schlock like that. And for me, it's the perfect blend of two powerhouse actors.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying they're both Oscar-winning and serious actors, but Travolta and Cage are good at what they do when they do it. And a director who basically says, I'm going to do the most over-the-top, ridiculous stuff ever, and I want you two to play each other and do an impression of each other. Which come on, what's not lot to love?
Definitely.
Great supporting cast as well. So I'm going to look forward to seeing who you. There's a lot of I know. Oh, they're in the thing, and she's in the thing, and he's in the thing. So there's a lot of that. So anyone at home as well. I'd really love for you to give it a watch before. Whenever we talk about this in the coming weeks and months. So yeah, reach out on Instagram at DRH Pod. Link in the description below, and use hashtag with DRH. So we'll watch Face Off. I can't wait to do some impressions and the next we're talking about it. Maybe that should be a part of it. We'll have to do a competition so people can tell us who did the best Nicolas Cage as John Travolta or the best John Travolta as Nicolas Cage.
I don't want to see any Nicolas Cage as Nicolas Cage.
No, none of that.
That'd be just ridiculous.
That's just Gary Busey. Right, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, guys, remember, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Bye.
Bye. Bogus.
Radical.
Cowabunga.